On the enterprise software side, that's obviously where we spend our time. I'll speak for Box for a second, and then maybe you can broaden it out for software. At Box, we're like 100% excited about this because one of the things that agents are both really good at, but also need for their workflows are your files. They need to be able to access the information to work with, to answer questions for you, to produce new information, to be able to store off memories and their working sessions that you can go and interact with. They need to be able to read specifications and documentation. All of that ends up being files. So what we are building is a platform layer that, whether you're a person interacting with your data, whether you're an application that needs to access data, or whether you're an agent that needs a file system to interact with, we want to be the platform layer that connects all of that. Mm-hmm. And the key why we at Box, we think we're in a kind of unique position is we don't think it's enough for the agent just to have its own sort of sandbox environment of a file system. Nor is it going to work for just people to have a separate environment. You're going to need something that actually connects those two worlds together. So that people are going to need some form of end user interface, even if that's an end user interface in a chat bot. They're still going to need to kind of interact with their data with something visual, and they'll likely eventually want to log into something and see all their content and be able to manage their sharing permissions and who they're working with. But agents just need a set of APIs, and agents need to be able to work with those APIs and facilitate all of the work that they're doing. So what we're investing in is making sure we've got the most powerful capabilities for agents to be able to work and work with all of this content that you want to give it. Now, there's all these new implications, which is how do you give an agent a separate space to work in that you're collaborating with that agent, but its blast radius is somewhat contained, so it doesn't kind of delete all of your data. And now all of a sudden you have this kind of crisis on your hands because your OpenClaw agent went and mucked with everything.
That just happened to Amazon, by the way. I mean, not to interrupt you, but Amazon, there was just a story in the FT that Amazon had outages because the agent was like, you know what I'm going to do to fix this problem? Just erase everything.
I can make the problem go away. No more code.
Delete.
You didn't like
always a good solution.
You didn't like your folder structure? Great. Now there is none. So you do have to be thoughtful about how do you kind of create the right, lines of demarcation between these systems. But again, for us, if you imagine that there's 5 or 10 or 100 times more agents in the future than people, which is, I think, a relatively safe assumption given the productivity increase that they're going to enable, all of those agents are going to work with enterprise information. They're going to need a secure space to work with that information. They're going to be able to store that data. They're going to be able to operate off of it. They're going to be able to answer questions for end users. They're going to be able to need to be able to store their own data. So that's what we're building. And we have to make sure, again, we make that as easy as possible for agents to go and utilize. I think that there's a meaningful amount of software that already exists that will also have to do the same thing. They will have to make their software ready for agents. I think there'll be some forms of software that get kind of compressed where agents don't really need to use their tools in the same way that people did. And that's obviously where you're going to see some pressure in the software market in some areas. And then there's going to be all new platforms that have to exist because we didn't anticipate the kind of new problems that agents are going to run into. And that's where you'll have, again, API first companies get launched from the start thinking, only in terms of platforms. And I think this is just going to be a tremendous amount of growth for anyone who at least has a play in that architecture.
Okay, so you mentioned productivity, and I think this is something that's worth examining as we end the show because I think there is this sort of discussion around AI. Oftentimes it's, well, there's productivity increases, and it's sort of accepted like, that there already are or there will be. But the data is a little bit mixed, and I just want to run it by you and get your perspective on what the data is saying. So this is from Fortune. Thousands of CEOs just admitted AI had no impact on employment or productivity. And it has economists resurrecting a paradox from 40 years ago. So it talks a little bit about how in the 1960s we had transistors, microprocessors, integrated circuits, and productivity growth actually ended up slowing from 2.9% beforehand to 1.1% in 1973. And so now you have all these CEOs that have been polled. And it is, 6,000 CEOs. 2/3 of the executives reported using AI. but it was 1.5 hours a week. 25% of the respondents reported not using it in the workplace at all. And nearly 90% of the firm said AI had no impact on employment or productivity over the last 3 years. I mean, maybe this is research done last year, but even still,
When was it? When was actually? I'm curious. When was that published, or when was the research taken?
I think I'm going to take a look. I don't have the exact date.
You would have to.
I'm going to get it. Hold on. It is published February 2026. I don't know exactly when the research was conducted over.
Yeah, but with the number of respondents, obviously that would have been probably sometime last year. But sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
Oh. Like as in just like defend AI or what?
I was just going to ask like what your perspective is here, because it does seem like we're in some ways, and this is sort of we want to pressure test a little bit about like some of these assumptions that we're going to have more AI agents than we'll have workers, that it will lead to this increase in productivity, whereas we're still seeing data where that is at sort of best when you look at this data up in the air.
I can understand the dissonance that might be out there between the tech-enabled economy and the rest of the economy, because what's happening is in tech, these agents are so effective at coding, and developers have far fewer barriers to adopt agents for coding than the rest of the knowledge worker economy has for the same level of productivity gain kind of use cases. So in coding, you've got these just incredible properties, which is the models are hyper trained on code. They, coding itself is a text only medium. Dario and Dwarkesh on their latest podcast kind of hinted at an interesting point, which is your code base contains most of the context that you end up working with. It's got your documentation, it's got all of the existing work that you've done. If you kind of compare, and then developers are just, are obviously more technical, generally more tapped into the internet and what's going on and the latest trends. They pull down the latest new products and try them out. Now you can compare that to the rest of knowledge work. The marketer at a CPG company, the lawyer at a mid-sized law firm. I'm making up kind of some kind of caricatures of various job functions, but basically like they're going about their day and they're not thinking like, how do I go and construct my workflow to just fully take advantage of agents and automate everything I'm doing. Like that's just like probably not top of mind for, most knowledge workers. They're going to go to ChatGPT. They're going to ask some questions. They're going to get an email written for them. They're going to summarize a document. They're going to build a new strategy plan. And then, they're going to be, the company will do incrementally a little bit more as a result of that. And maybe their strategy changes a little bit more, or the financial analyst comes up with some new insights. That's, I think, probably been the state of AI for the past couple of years, at least whenever a survey like this would have tried to analyze. Compare that to engineering, where we have products that we build these are the estimates from the actual engineer, that we will build 5 times faster because of AI coding. And we will, as a result of that, be able to ship significantly more capabilities to our customers. We will be able to solve significantly more problems for our customers. In many cases, we might not even charge more for that functionality. We are going to pack that into their existing licenses because we now can. So to some extent, what would you measure in our kind of productivity? This is now just a priced in thing that we do because we have to deliver more and more value, because obviously tech is hyper competitive and we want to now add more capability to our customers. I think that has not yet rippled through the rest of knowledge work, and I think it just will. It will have to, because the tools will get better and better, and you'll have one competitor in a market that is able to use AI to either lower their costs or lower their fees to the customer, or be able to deliver a substantially higher product to the customer. And as you see more and more examples of that will just start to transform these market dynamics. Right. I would say equally that, I like to operate off of, I think Bezos had this line, is when the anecdotes and the data disagree, you have to look at the anecdotes. And so, look at the Equal headline from 2 weeks ago of KPMG asking their auditor to lower their fees because of AI. That I think is that's your initial signal of actually what's going to happen, which is a company's going to say, that kind of work that we now know we can bring automation to, we should be spending less on, and then using those dollars to do something else in our company that is higher productivity or more, or that makes us more effective or more competitive. And once you do that dozens or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of times in an ecosystem, that's where you'll start to see kind of this reshaping of how these markets will play out. It's happening in tech, unquestionably. And now the only thing is, what's the roadmap to that happening across the rest of the economy? That's going to take time. People have to change their workflows. People don't have data set up in a way that is sort of prepared for agents. The agents themselves don't always have the right interfaces or tooling to be supported in knowledge work. So I'm actually extremely pragmatic about this, where I think I could agree with the survey that you just read and equally be completely unfazed and more of anything, just say people should be probably prepared for this will come from more areas of knowledge work. I'm the biggest optimist on the jobs impact of that. So I don't see that as a scary thing. I think it's just going to mean companies will have to sign up to do way more for their customers. I think that will be where it shows up is we will have a surplus on the consumer side of all of the vendors that we work with. We'll just have to deliver better and better services for us. Or if you're a B2B company, then all of your vendors will have to deliver greater services. And we will wake up in 5 or 10 years and it'll actually kind of feel like relatively normal. There's not going to be some kind of crazy, it's not going to be the sci-fi movie. It's going to be that we just have incrementally better consumer experiences and better services, just as if you went back, 40 years ago and tried to imagine life of a lawyer or a healthcare professional, and you'd be like, wow, how did you do your job? Without a computer? How did you understand the legal case precedents without an internet search that you could go do? That's going to be work in 5 years from now, is you'll be like, how did you do that without an agent that drafted your entire contract, for you instantly so you could respond to the client that was on the phone? That we will have that same set of questions and be confused how we even work the way we do today. But yet it won't be some kind of, completely transformation of we'll still have people, they'll be working together, they'll deploy tasks to agents, those agents will go off and farm more and do work, and then people will go and bring it back to the task at hand to move whatever their sort of, work or project is forward.
That's right. Yeah. When I'm watching Claude Code go, I look at it and I say, wait, people did this before? That seems like a lot of time to do things that are automatable. 100%. But
literally, you used to have to spend 2 weeks on a library, change that you wanted to make in your code base. And that's now a 10-minute activity. But are we spending any less time building software? No, it's because we're just now doing the things that we didn't get to because we were spending the 2 weeks doing the library update.